For a long time now, US stocks have basically been the only thing that anybody talks about. And honestly, it's for good reason. They've crushed it for years. VOO, the S&P 500, tech stocks like QQQM and the ETF, that was the market. But over the last year or so, if you've noticed, I've noticed something has been different. International stocks were quietly doing better and much better, and almost no one has been talking about it. So I wanted to make this video just to explain what's actually happening, why it's been ignored for so long, and what I think people should do about it. Before we jump in, if you enjoy this video and my content, please subscribe, hit the like button, drop a comment. So those are the kind of things that let me know that you're enjoying it and appreciating it and help this channel grow. So getting into it here, if you're a US based investor, this time has probably felt weird for you because for the most of the last decade, the lesson has been very clear. Buy VOO, own US stocks, move on. International stocks have felt slow, boring, sometimes even broken. So a lot of people either trimmed them down in their portfolio, stopped buying new shares of international stocks, or just stopped owning them altogether. But markets don't really care what's felt obvious. They care about starting prices, expectations, and value. And that's where things have started to shift. So let's talk about this in reality. VOO, which is the S&P 500, and VXUS, which is a very popular ETF for international stocks. For a long time, the comparison between these two has been very one-sided. In 2025, however, VOO had a solid year. It was up about 18%. Great year by most people's standards. VXUS also had a great year. It was up 32%. But it didn't get really any attention because US stocks are the headline. Now, looking at 2026 so far, VOO is up again, a modest about 0.7% right now. While VXUS, meanwhile, same time year to date, 2026, is up closer to 6%, about 5.6%. And that is a huge difference. But the important part, as always, is why. It's not because international companies suddenly became some amazing thing. It's because expectations for them were so low for such a long time. US stocks didn't suddenly become bad either. They've just started from very different prices and very different values. When you buy VOO, you're buying companies that the world already loves, that they've already been talking about, that some would even argue may be slightly inflated or in a bubble, potentially. When you buy VXUS, you are buying companies that have spent years, probably over a decade, being ignored and not talked about. And over time, markets tend to correct that imbalance with reversion to the mean. Sometimes it's quietly, sometimes it's not. Now, just pausing here for a second, this is not a US stocks are done Armageddon video or argument. It's not a call to rush your portfolio into international stocks. It's just recognizing that sometimes things change slowly, sometimes fastly, and not usually all at once. And when you can see that happening in real time, it might be time to consider adjusting some of your portfolio. I think to zoom in one level deeper though, if you look at the small cap value difference between international and the US is where you really see this pronounced at an even larger level. The same thing shows up here. I personally like the Avantis funds, even though they're not a true index like the Russell 2000, they're a very well managed mutual fund that is actively managed with an algorithm by Avantis. So AVUV is small cap value and AVDV is international small cap value. And this is where things really get crazy. In 2025, AVUV or US small cap value was up roughly 7%. Perfectly fine year, pretty average return. AVDV, which is international small cap value, was up close to 50%. That is 50. That's not a typo. And so far in 2026, same trend. AVUV is up, about 7% or so, depending on, what time you're looking at this. And AVDV is up closer to around 10%. So again, this is not about declaring a new winner or making some bold, crazy prediction. It's about noticing where expectations were and where the value is. International small cap value had and has lower valuations, more economic sensitivity, and way less investor attention. And that can be uncomfortable, but that discomfort is often where higher expected returns can come from. This is mean reversion showing up in real time real portfolios, not just theory. Why is nobody really talking about this? The reason that this hasn't gotten much attention to me is pretty simple. International stocks don't have great stories. They'll really probably never dominate headlines. They don't feel exciting, and they've underperformed for a long time. Recency bias and country or home bias is very powerful. People naturally assume that what has worked well recently will keep working, and that the countries that have dominated for a long time recently will keep dominating. But markets don't reward comfort, they reward what's priced pessimistically. International stocks have spent years being cheap and undervalued and underpriced. So, what should people actually do with this information? And this is the important part. And as always, I am not a financial advisor. I don't know your personal situation. I'm just talking about what I do with my portfolio. This is not a call to sell your US positions, sell VOO, go chase VXUS or AVDV performance. That's just performance chasing. This takeaway is much simpler and I would argue maybe sometimes harder for people to actually follow through with. And that is that diversification works, even when it feels wrong. If you already own VOO and VXUS or a total world fund, you're doing great. You're not late, you're not early, you're just diversified. You're buying the market as it is. And that's the point. If you're on the other end, which is where you've owned 100% US, this isn't a panic signal. I'm not telling you to sell or do anything crazy. It's just a reminder that sometimes buying global stocks at a market cap value with inefficient markets like we're in today, where the information is out there and a lot of whatever story you're coming up with inside of an ETF or a factor tilt, that story is known by all the investors. So get diversified. So in closing here, international stocks aren't doing well because something is broken in the US or that VOO and the S&P 500 are a bad purchase. They're doing well because markets have spent a long time assuming that they didn't matter and that they would never revert to the mean. And markets tend to correct that kind of thinking, sometimes quietly, uncomfortably, and over time. So I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope these concepts made sense to you. If you have any questions or want me to elaborate on things, please drop it in the comments. Please like this video and consider subscribing. Thank you.